readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears. Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the Brothers Gwynne. I am Will and this is my brother Ed, and today we're here to talk about what we read in the month of July. We didn't get through as many as we set out to at the beginning of the month, but we were pretty ambitious and we still managed to get through a few. So Ed, why don't you start us off and tell us what you read?
Very good. The first book I read this month was called Winter Counts by David Whedon. And this it's a book outside of my comfort zone, so it's a crime book, but it's set in a reservation, in a Native American reservation, part of the Lakota reservation. So immediately, if you watch the channel, you know that I like reading about Native American cultures and all the different bands, and I thought I'd read something modern. Now this, basically, the main character is kind of a local enforcer who kind of works below police level, and he's basically a paid hitman but he doesn't kill people, he kind of beats them up, but because there's not much justice basically from the police on any reservations, so he kind of dishes it out through people that pay him. It's kind of like a Deadpool, how he started off kind of thing, but without the growing your hand back. But yeah, so anyway, there's kind of a drug problem on the reservation, and he gets embroiled in trying to find out who and what is going on. And at first, I really enjoyed reading about kind of the different setting. It's a crime, but set on a reservation. It's something very different to what I've ever read or watched before, because I watch crime, a lot of crime, but I don't read too much of it. But at first it felt original, and then about 20% in, it started kicking in with those really classic tropes that usually, I don't really care about tropes, to be honest, but this just felt like it was just handled not to the best way that it could. I think maybe a more experienced writer could have done a bit more of a better job. Maybe David Whedon, I don't know, really. It just didn't really click with me. It felt like lots of it was forced. Some of the dialogue was very wooden. It didn't feel, very realistic or authentic, which, my favourite crime document series would be True Detective, and that feels like it's horrific, but it's very real at the same time, which kind of lends to the horror aspect. Yeah.
But so I could have enjoyed this a lot more. There were some, some cool moments, and there was some, it was kind of there was a message in there, basically saying that the justice from the American police system is not a thing, basically, on reservations. So that was kind of eye-opening for me. So I'm definitely glad I read it. But maybe crime isn't my favourite genre, but yeah, so it just wasn't really.
But at least you gave it a shot.
Yeah, I'm glad I read it. Yeah.
Good. And next, my first one is I listened to The Two Towers. So I thought I wanted to go through The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion again, and I thought I can kick this off through listening to Andy Serkis narrate them. I've never listened to the audiobooks of anything in Middle-earth before, and so now I've got through The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, and I absolutely adored The Two Towers as well. I'm actually currently reading The Return of the King, but not finished yet, so that'll be in August. But anyway, back to this. We're talking about July, I read The Two Towers, and I absolutely adored Andy Serkis' narration. It is an incredible story. Some of the best moments of anything in Middle-earth, in my opinion, takes place in this book. And yeah, Andy Serkis did a fantastic job crafting that tone and atmosphere throughout the book, and really creating that magical feel that sometimes creates that tone of dread, but at other times is very charming and quite ethereal as well. And he did a fantastic job, and with some amazing source material.
Yeah, Two Towers is my favourite Lord of the Rings book. Just the whole segment in Rohan, the court, the hall of Meduseld is just amazing. I love all of that set piece. So another book that I read and absolutely loved was A Fool's Hope. Now this is by Mike Shackle, book 2 of The Last War. Book 1 is We Are the Dead. We recently interviewed Mike Shackle and it was bags of fun. William was kind of peer pressure me into reading We Are the Dead. Firstly, he made me read Rage of Dragons.
I did.
Which which I loved. Then I trusted him, and he said you should read We Are the Dead. So I did, and I grew to trust him even more, which is cool. But yeah, Fool's Hope is fantastic. It is a fantasy which is kind of inspired, I think,
by the Nazi occupation of France, and it is very harrowing. It's a very, it's a dark story. I'm not going to say grim dark because kind of people get a bit scared by that word sometimes, but it's a grim and it's a dark world. But you follow a kind of an array of point of views that sometimes they meet each other, sometimes they don't.
I love the interactions.
And yeah, the interactions are fantastic. Some of them are outright heroes. Some of them are really morally grey. Some of them are people doing awful things but with good intentions, the greater good, that kind of thing. And other people are they're the villains, but they're the hero of their own story, which I really like reading. This is definitely a series that people, fans of Tarantino, fans of Joe Abercrombie would love. Also fans of David Gemmell, fans of Papa Gwynne. There's a great mashup here.
Yeah, with those really fast-paced chapters.
Chapters. Each one ends in a cliffhanger, and the ending was so strong. I didn't think A Fool's Hope could top We Are the Dead, but it did somehow.
It is an awesome read, and we're going to be reading into the last very soon because it arrived yesterday, so that'll be awesome. Next up, I have Daughter of Red Winter by Ed McDonald. This is a recent release. I think it came out in the last few days of June, and this is the beginning of Ed McDonald's new fantasy series. He previously wrote
Blackwing, The Raven's Mark.
Raven's Mark, that's it. So Blackwing is book one of that. And yes, so I've not read anything by him in the past, so I was quite surprised reading this because I've heard he's a very grimdark author. It's not that, so don't go into reading Daughter of Red Winter expecting it to be similar to his previous series. It's very different. There are dark aspects. It's quite a melancholic. It's got quite a melancholic tone that Ed McDonald crafts. I really enjoyed the beginning. I'd say there's quite a lull in the middle where I was kind of urging the story to give me more. But then Ed McDonald returns to the ending, which is very engaging, and it has a good climactic conclusion, I would say, and it's worth checking out. So yeah, that's the fantasy series book one released recently that people should check out.
Very nice edition too. Where'd you get that edition from?
Broken Binding.
The Broken Binding. What a surprise!
What a surprise!
And I listened to a book called The Captured by Scott Zesch. And Scott Zesch, he has a member of his family, I think it's his great-granddad or his great-great-uncle or something like that. It was a distant relation, was captured by the band The Comanche during the 19th century. And no one really knew what his family member went through. So his mission was to try and do as much research as possible, try and interview people, and try and kind of work out an idea of what would have happened to someone being captured in the 19th century, a young boy being captured or a young child being captured by the band The Comanche, and find out what life would be like. And basically, The Captured is a story. It's about 3 or 4 stories in one of different children's experiences in Comanche areas. So yeah, I found that fascinating. It's something I would love. I think if you want to kind of get a grasp of what life was like in the 19th century in the Great Plain along the border of Texas as well, then it is well worth checking out. And it's it's a great book. It's written really well, and it is so real. That's the thing. All of these things, all the things that Scott Zesch writes about, is actually real, which makes it even more horrific. It is harrowing. But yeah, it's well worth a read.
And quick side note, sorry if there's a bit of banging, I think there's some work going on outside. But
I think Dad's putting up a fence, to be honest.
We'll have to fight through it. We'll fight through it. Next up, I have Tyrants Thrown by Sebastian de Castell. This marks the conclusion of the Greycoats tetralogy. Quartet, as I used to call it. So yes, this is the finale, the grand conclusion, the climactic ending that I was waiting for. It was bittersweet leaving these characters, Falcio, Kess, Brasti, Valiana, all this lot. It's mainly known for his central bromance between those three, which is awesome, but from Saint's Blood and Tyrant's Throne, the side characters really came into their own, and also were added to my favourite characters list. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was a fantastic story, really good ending, and Sebastian does a great job mixing that humour with that emotional depth that these characters really have, where they often use humour as a defence mechanism, but you see that they really understand each other, and their love for each other it evokes a lot of emotion, or it did for me anyway, as the reader. And this is something I'd recommend to many a fantasy reader.
And now a book that William recommended to me, another one that I had to read because we've been challenging each other to read books that the other person would like them to. And this is William's favourite book in the world, which is The Silmarillion.
That's true.
So, William loves family trees. He loves lists of names. That's why he loves The Silmarillion so much. So how did I get on with it? Let's find out. So the Silmarillion. This is a really nice edition, Will.
Yeah.
No, just the Silmarillion is a book by Tolkien that is basically his notes on the history.
Published by Christopher Tolkien.
The history of the world of Middle Earth, Tolkien's world. So,
Silmarillion is basically the first age.
The first age. There is some second age and third age stuff in this book, but yeah, it's mostly the first age. So yeah, it's really cool. There's a lot of history here. It's written in a way that feels a little bit like the Icelandic sagas, but even more stripped back and bare sometimes. There's lots and lots of short stories in here. Basically, there's the one story about the beginning of the world. There's another story about two main characters who fall in love, which is really exciting. There's another story about these big battles against the big evil. Sauron is just basically like a captain, isn't he? And his master Morgoth, Melkor, is actually the big bad. So Lord of the Rings is pretty minute in comparison to what happens in the Silmarillion, which is a bit more like the Battle of Five Armies epic level, even bigger than
much bigger than that.
Which is really cool. So if you like Balrogs, then definitely go read this. But the Silmarillion, I really struggled with it at times. Other times I just ate up some of these stories. Beren and Luthien, what an amazing story. The Fall of Gondolin, amazing. The Battle of Unnumbered Tears, absolutely phenomenal. Some of the others, though, I didn't really get on well with. The Turin Chirumba it just didn't feel like a Tolkien story really at times. But you can see Tolkien's influence here from the Anglo-Saxon and Old Norse texts, which is really cool. I really like seeing the parallels between them. You can see that he was a scholar. How to put in that fence up. What is he like, eh? You okay? But the Silmarillion did go on my honourable mentions for top 10 reads of the year so far. Yeah, there are amazing characters like Glorfindel, Beren, Huan the Hound.
Beleg Strongbow.
Beleg Strongbow. Huan is probably the only dog/wolf in fantasy who can even come close to Storm, in my opinion, which is awesome. People say Night Eyes. I haven't read it, but no way does she beat Storm.
You can't just say... No, Storm is obviously the best.
Obviously.
But Night Eyes...
Is that why you had Night Eyes as your animal companion?
I chose Night Eyes as my animal companion.
You could have chosen Craft, Will.
Because I want... dogs are my favourite animal. Dogs are my favourite animal. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you've got Storm, I'll fit in.
Actually, you don't like birds, to be fair,
They do freak me out.
Yeah.
Just generalisation. I don't wish any ill to them, but...
Finrod Felagund, awesome guy. Awesome. It's fantastic. Really excited. I had to read this for the Rings of Power, so now I feel like I've read the fantasy Bible, and as on my Goodreads review I said, now I can rest.
Good. Yes, you can. Next up, I have War of the Wolf, which I listened to. So this is the 11th instalment of... you went there, Ed?
Yeah,
the 11th instalment of the Saxon Stories, otherwise known as The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. So book 11, I'm nearly reaching the end, and this was a very entertaining 11th edition. Really great. Old Uhtred is really coming to his own. He's a fantastic character who just has growth with every single book. And I feel like I just know him so well. And this is a great addition to the series.
Very nice. And I also read The Daughter of Red Winter by Ed MacDonald. Now, I absolutely love the Raven's Mark trilogy. I think Blackwing is one of the best fantasy books I've read, let alone just debuts. And Galahad was a fantastic character. Daughter of Red Winter is a big departure from that style of writing. I read the first few chapters and I was like, wow, this writing is beautiful. I think Ed MacDonald... this is the closest in prose that I've ever read in fantasy that can compare to Sally Rooney. That kind of stripped back, very effective, very fast-paced, quick prose, which is brilliant. Ed MacDonald, his style here is a little bit like Sally Rooney and meets Neil Gaiman.
I see what you mean.
I think, in terms of the character, the main character's thoughts. There's lots of kind of Scottish influence here with the kind of the world building of The Daughter of Red Winter, which is really interesting. I haven't seen much of that, which is cool. I really like that.
It is cool.
But basically, the character here can see dead people, can see ghosts, and it's not really a good thing in this world. People don't think it's pretty. It's not fun. They don't find it exciting.
It's not fun.
So anyway, stuff happens, and then this character finds himself in the middle section of the book, the middle third. going to kind of a school to train. And usually that's my favourite segment of books, like the Poppy War. I loved that. Blood Song, fantastic segment there. But yeah, so that part in this book felt like it did hinder the book. I think the strong parts were the beginning and the end, and to me, I think the middle third, like Will said earlier, it did kind of bog it down a little bit. It got to the point where the main character, I didn't really like her all that much. Whereas, if I compare it to the Ravens, Mark Gallagher was always likable, even if he was, up to no good, that kind of stuff. But this character she felt, she just like kind of fell off a little bit for me. But the ending was awesome. I think Ed McDonald, give him that, he can really write a really good ending. So I'll definitely check out book 2 and book 3 if it is a trilogy. I can't remember. I think it is a trilogy. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Ed McDonald does next, because he is a great writer. He's a good author. And I think, this world definitely has a lot of potential. And I think with the way that this book ended, I think I'll really enjoy book 2 as well.
Very nice, sir. Very nice. And next up for me is, it's a story in the short story collection, Different Seasons by Stephen King. In June, I read Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption.
Yep.
And in July, I read Apt Pupil, which was thoroughly disturbing.
I thought you said enjoyable.
Yeah, it was enjoyable in a really disturbing way.
Sick, messed up kind of way.
Todd is messed up. So this is disturbing. And only read it if you're ready for a very disturbing read.
What's it about, Will?
So it is about a kid who finds out that someone who lives near him, this old man, used to be a guard in a Nazi concentration camp. So this kid, he's like a very young teenager. I think he's 12, 13 at the beginning. And he, instead of reporting this to someone, he thinks he can use this knowledge as leverage to find out about what was happening in the concentration camps. And he enjoys hearing about it. So, yeah, he's not a nice boy. And obviously this man who finds out that this kid knows about him is terrified that if the kid tells anybody, then he's going to be sent to prison. His whole life's going to be turned upside down. So he tells the kids some of the stories, and their lives become intertwined over a long journey of years, because they both have leverage over the other. They could both ruin each other's lives. So yeah, it's very tense, very disturbing, very entertaining read with a great conclusion as well. Which I know a lot of people say Stephen King's weakness is his conclusions, but in Apt Pupil he shows that he can do a very good one as well.
It's a great ending. And the last read of the month for me was Malice by John Gwynne, by Papa Gwynne himself, The Faith and the Fallen. This is my favourite book of all time. I love it, being in Ardan with Corban when he's young, and he actually is happy for some part of the book. Here's a lovely addition from the Broken Binding. But yeah, I adore Malice because it just reminds me of being a child. It reminds me of that nostalgia as well. Corban has always been kind of a big player in our conversations at home, and truth and courage isn't just a motto, it is a part of our family. So that's I just love reading about all these characters. It's so much fun, like Dath and Camlin, and all these connections I have to these characters from when I was younger, and it holds up so well today. I think the multi POV, the world building here is so exciting. I love Celtic mythology, and it's so much here. I mean, this is basically Caesar's Gallic Wars, where one of the characters starts to kind of reinvent the way that warfare is happening across the banished lands, which is where all these people live, and kind of goes in more of a kind of a shield wall way, people working together, and that's really exciting for me. I like reading about warfare, but also like reading about these characters, and it's one of my favourite coming of age stories. So it is my favourite coming of age story. So yeah,
it is.
Thank you, Papa.
Mine as well. Yeah, I'm going to be rereading them soon as well.
That is my last book,
and you maybe want to do it more. So next up, I have The Templars, which is a non-fiction book by Dan Jones, and this is about the Order, the Knights Templar, which were around for just under 200 years, from I believe 1119 to 1312, if I remember correctly. I'm probably a tiny bit out there, but around that time span. So this says about their origins, how they came into their prime, and then their fall as well. And a lot of it is about the political intrigue of the high powers of mainland Europe, as well as their very active role in many of the Crusades. We get a big picture and what are many of the main events that we hear about today from the Middle Ages in this time period. And yeah, it's very interesting. Dan Jones lays it out in a way that you learn a lot, but he keeps away from overloading you. He makes sure to split it into different categories, which are really interesting, and explains what the consequences of each of these actions are, which is great, and it really shows us an insight into the minds of people who lived at the time, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Very nice. Yeah, I definitely need to check out more Dan Jones, because he's written so many great historical non-fiction novels, which really
but
exciting.
also he's got his debut historical fiction story coming out in September, Essex Dogs, which very interesting. There's some special editions on sale at the moment at the Broken Binding, which I've got a copy of that waiting for me.
The thought process in my head is when I see a new book coming out in the medieval period, I will look on the back, and usually at the top it says the date. It usually says the date, this place, and then it has like a punchline. And Essex Dog, any book that to me says 1346, I'm going to read it, because that is the year of Cressy, basically the first huge battle of the 100-Year War between England and France, which went on for quite a bit longer.
I think
than 100 years.
It's going to be pretty awesome.
It's going to be fantastic, I think. Dan Jones, obviously, it is perfect for us historical nerds, because we know he's going to get all those historical details right. And also, I'm sure he'll have a great grasp of the characters. There have been some really good series written in the medieval period, about the medieval period, and Essex Dogs, I'm sure, will be one of them. Great title as well.
It is a great title. Now on to my last one. Are you ready for this? I'm sure everyone's looking forward to hearing about this. Ready?
Best plot here.
Theory test, practical test, and highway code. So I thought it contained a lot of information and a lot of world building, but the plot is a bit thin, I thought. At the beginning it was riding quite strong, gave us a lot of background, but it had no punch at the end.
The characters
was lacking.
They're so passive. They don't take control of the roads.
Yeah, and I felt
the path.
And I felt like the reader
lives.
just didn't believe in the reader, had to spell out everything. Whereas at some point I was like, come on, let me have a bit more of an active role here.
Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
That's what I think that whoever wrote this could learn from for the next project.
Why are you reading a theory test, Will?
From a pleasurable experience. No, I have my driving theory soon, so hopefully reading this can help with that. But the plot needs work. Anyway, that is all of our... Oh, actually, before we sign off, we're going to talk about a few of the main events that took place in July.
And we're going to do Book of the Month.
Yes, we are. So, we had, as we've already mentioned, an awesome interview with Mike Shackle. Thank you, Mike Shackle, if you're watching. It was a great experience. Go pick up We Are the Dead and the Last War if you haven't already. We featured on Talking About Nothing with Mike's book reviews on his channel, which is basically, we just got on there and we talked about a random bunch of book-related stuff, which was a lot of fun. So thank you, Mike, for having us on the channel. We also featured in the Library of Vikings video of Book of the Year so far by some smaller booktubers, and so we've got a 45-second segment in there where we talk about our favourite reads of the month. And it was we were on a few different channels this month, and quite a lot was happening. It was. And we also had a chat with Dylan and Charles on the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. I think it was released on the 1st of August, but we
did it
talked,
on the 31st.
We recorded it on the end of July, and we were talking about The Hunger of the Gods. No spoilers, so we'll leave a link to check that out in the description below. So it was quite busy, but it was really enjoyable. And now on to our book of the month. Ed?
My book of the month was A Fool's Hope by Mike Shackle. Now, remember in Book of the Month we don't include rereads, and A Fool's Hope is one of the best fantasy books I've read in a very long time. I think The Last War is shaping up to be my favourite fantasy series of the year so far.
We love to hear it.
Fantastic. This book, like I said earlier, I didn't think it could beat We Are the Dead, and I adored that so much. It took me by surprise. And this book did top it somehow. They're both 5-star reads for me. They're both at the top of their game, and they're both books that I probably will be championing their cause for a very long time. So, guys, I say you just go and read the last one now before we start telling you to all the time. And then you can say, "Oh, I've read it before." Before they told us to.
Exactly.
So it's really exciting. It's such a fun series. Well, fun sometimes, but brutal.
Very entertaining. And my book of the month is Tyrants Thrown by Sebastian de Castel. This conclusion to the Greatcoat series was a bittersweet one, leaving these characters. It was sad, but it was really well done. Some really emotional moments, and I had some goosebumps in some speeches as well. The great climax is just great, and that final action sequence is just awesome. The vivid image of that really it was stunning. But yeah, there we go. That's our book of the month, and thank you everyone who has watched. This is our July reads. We've got lots more planned for the channel for August, so hopefully you stick along for that. We've nearly hit 4,000 subscribers, so hopefully we can hit that this month. And we did our 100 video Q&A celebration as well, which was released in August. So yeah, maybe check that out if you want to get to know us a bit better. We answered a lot of people's questions, and that was a lot of fun. But everyone, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Hope we intrigued you in a few books, and let us know what you're planning. What you read in July and what you're planning to read in August. So thank you very much for watching. Truth and Courage, the Brothers Gwynne.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Truth and Courage. Stay safe from the Brothers Gwynne.